The New York Knicks just made a trade for Karl Anthony Towns to help shore up their center position. And I'm going to tell you why the trade just continues to point out things to me. And the way that the Knicks organization operates continues to just point out how the Chicago Bulls fail at every aspect of building a team. We're going to talk about all that, plus dive into the mailbag and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. So one of the things that I hate having to admit as a Bulls fan, and keep in mind, this is a Bulls fan that grew up in the 90s, is that when the Knicks do anything right, when the Knicks are even the fact that the Knicks are one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference is something that I absolutely hate to admit. But as a basketball fan, right, sometimes the basketball fan in me, the overall NBA fan, has to really acknowledge some things that the Bulls fan of me does not want to admit, right? And while I'm in no way saying that this trade with the New York Knicks, for the New York Knicks with the Minnesota Timberwolves, have all of a sudden turned the New York Knicks into the favorite in the East or anything like that, I am going to say this, is that the way that the Knicks front office continues to be aggressive about going out there and shoring up things that their team needs, it baffles me, right? Keep in mind, this is a team that just gave up so many assets, over 5 picks to get Mikal Bridges in there, right? And then they still have enough in that same offseason to turn around and flip Julius Randle, a player that was not even healthy for their playoff run last year, and turn around and get Karl Anthony Towns, a player that just helped his team go to the Western Conference Finals, and get a center at a position of need. You know one thing, and this is, I can't remember who it was where I had a disagreement with somebody who was leaving voicemails in saying that, well, the Knicks aren't going to win a title. Yeah, it's not about that. There's only one team that can win a title every year, right? It's not just about that. But it is about the fact that the Knicks, the way that they have been since really, building the team, right? They built a solid foundation of players, right? And then as they went on, and then when they finally got Jalen Brunson, when they signed Jalen Brunson, and the way that he took off with that team, they have since continued to make moves to keep building around Jalen Brunson and to continue trying to solve some of the issues that team has. And that's something that the basketball fan in me has to acknowledge. But there's another side of this trade as well that's not even looking at the Knicks that, I'll talk about when it comes to the Charlotte Hornets and how they put themselves in a position the Bulls will never be in, unfortunately, right? But you just have to give some props to the Knicks on how they continue to be aggressive and how they balk at that first tax apron and kind of look at it and say, we're going to maintain some flexibility elsewhere. Now, I won't act like this trade doesn't have some things to work out and to look at, right? Losing Dante DiVincenzo could be big for that team with spacing, things like that. When Mitchell Robinson, when and if he does come back from injury, which is something that we still have to see, while that team then has the size that they need, right? It's still a team that you're still waiting to see exactly how those parts are going to fix. Having OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart all out there, right? Now they're theoretically looking at maybe Josh Hart starting at the 4, right? Because I don't think you're going to put Precious Achiuwa there. They did sign Marcus Morris Sr., who has been a solid veteran who can fill in and do some spot things for them as well. But, this is a team that the way that the Knicks are going to play basketball is going to be fun. They're going to get out and run. They're going to play fast. A lot is going to be based off Jalen Brunson and his ability to create shots on ball. He's now clearly their only on ball creator. Julius Randle was a player that could do some on ball creation for them, but again, so this team is really going to be looking at stopping everything out on the perimeter. And while Karl Anthony Towns has the soft label, he has the label as far as not being a great on ball defender. One thing that Karl Anthony Towns can do is can block some shots and can rebound and can score the ball. So they're going to be not as bad defensively as like an Indiana Pacers, not by any stretch of the imagination. They're going to have enough solid perimeter defense, right? Whereas the Pacers did not have that. And they're still going to be able to absolutely fill it up. Like, you look at that, and Mikal Bridges, I think with now how much scoring this New York Knicks team has in that starting lineup, we may see Mikal Bridges go back to that defender he was at one point that teams look at. But, all aside, right, trying to break down and not break down how the New York Knicks are going to play basketball, it still comes down to this for me when it comes to the New York Knicks. Like I said, the way that they have been extremely aggressive about going out and adding talent every single year over the last few years. Every single year. And they've done that, adding DiVincenzo, adding Mikal Bridges, trading for OG Anunoby, right? When they did that. Even when you go back to them getting Randall, right? So, like, this is a team that has built it over time. And they still got Tyler Kolek down there, who was their draft pick, who I think isn't going to start off the season healthy, but especially as a bench point guard role, watch him rise up those ranks over the course of his rookie season. He may not play a whole lot his rookie year as they have McBride there and Campaign, but Kolek is a player that has the ability to score and definitely create for others, and that could become a dangerous combination of bringing him to run your offense when Jalen Brunson isn't in that team. They've just built the team smart, and they've been aggressive in doing so. And then you also got to look at the fact of they've done it while still maintaining flexibility. Yes, they're over the tax apron, but they're $900,000 below the second tax apron, which is the thing that teams are trying to avoid. And with that, they're $9 million below the tax apron next year without having any really major parts of their roster being unrestricted free agents next year in the offseason. Precious Achiuwa, Jericho Sims, Campaign, Marcus Morris Sr., Landry Shamet, and Okiki, they're their unrestricted free agents. Those are players that you're not looking at necessarily being a huge part of that team going forward. And then the year after that, they will have $41 million beneath the first tax apron, and they will still have Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges will be an unrestricted free agent, but Josh Hart still all under contract with Mitchell Robinson and Mikal Bridges being unrestricted free agents at that point. And they could still, because they still have $41 million beneath the tax apron, they can look to try to keep those players if need be, or they still maintain flexibility to add something. This New York Knicks team, I hate the Knicks. I want to be clear. I hate the Knicks, and in no way am I saying that the Knicks are necessarily a championship contending team, but I am saying that, well, no, they're a contender for a championship. They're not a favorite to win a championship per se, but this is a team that has continued to be aggressive. And that's what I would have loved the Bulls to do. Now, I get it. We were in a much different situation. After we added Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, we had injuries, right? But after adding, and that's what the Knicks did not rest on. They didn't just add Jalen Brunson and then said, oh, continuity. No, they got Jalen Brunson. They saw, oh, no, Jalen is the real deal, right? This is a player that we can build around his skill set. He's going to take his game to another level. Now, how do we continue to add to that? And the Bulls weren't really in that situation. But there's another thing about this trade that pisses me off, right? And again, this is kind of more of a vent session for me. The thing that pisses me off about this trade is the Charlotte Hornets. Keep in mind, the Charlotte Hornets are a team that I think if they're fully healthy, if they're fully healthy, right? And that means that LaMelo Ball stays healthy. I still think this team can win 40 to 45 games, right? But this team is in a position because they are still labeled as a rebuilding or whatever team. They're able to slide into this trade. They're able to get reportedly it will be a pick back that they're getting, and they took on salary in the salary dump. They're not going to really send out anything else. But the Bulls are even not in a position to even be the third team in a trade, right? When's the last time the Bulls were a third team in a trade and they got one of the best assets back, right? Like, this is a team that in a sign and trade for DeMar DeRozan, they got back freaking Chris Duarte and a few second round picks. But then in the third team to get that, which the Spurs, they got the pick swap and they got Harrison Barnes because they were able to take on the salary, right? This trade just kind of brought home a lot of my discontent with this Bulls team. Now, Bulls front office. Now, again, that doesn't mean I still, I like the young players that we have here. I like what we're building with the young core here. I like all of that. But this is still a team that, when you're in a place of trying to gain assets, when you're in a place of you're still trying to figure out exactly what and where your team's going to look like, being the Bulls, like that, they've clearly gone younger and they're not in a position to even take on salary dump because of the way they've mismanaged their assets and their salary cap. They've hard capped themselves. That is like this trade was just a perfect example of just why the Bulls are so far away from the teams that are in the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference and teams that are going to stay in that upper echelon because of the aggressiveness of their front offices. Right? That is one of the things. Like, you have to be an aggressive front office if you really want to pull yourself out and get lucky, get assets, whatever that is. And the Bulls keep being one of those teams that they don't show that type of creativity. They don't show that type of flexibility. They don't show that type of foresight in anything. And that's where we sit again, man. And it's unfortunate, but this is, again, a team in the Eastern Conference. Now, they were already well above the Bulls, right? Gets stronger, gets even stronger, right? And you look at the teams that are in the top of the Eastern Conference, finished in the top 4 of the Eastern Conference. The Boston Celtics, they kept that team primarily the same. The point differential, when having one of the best in NBA history, they should have. The New York Knicks got better after also having a great point differential, especially against the other top teams in the league. All right, the Milwaukee Bucks, I'm not worried about the Milwaukee Bucks. They finished third. They're going to win a lot of regular season games. They're not going to go far in the playoffs. The Cavs, they doubled down on their young core. They've signed them to extension, so if they do need to move off of them, they're in a position to where the team getting those players, if they do need to move off any of these cores, are going to have those players for years, so they're going to give up more back in a trade. The Orlando Magic, a team that went out and got KCP to help that team with what they needed drastically, and that's some defense, right? So they got that, and some offense that could bring some shooting. The Pacers are hoping on health. The Philadelphia 76ers have completely flipped that roster around, right? So, like, it's just, hey, man, the Bulls are going bull, man. But, like, seeing trades like this, it just reminds you of how it's not always just about, being aggressive in free agent market and using your cap space. It's also about the flexibility that brings you and using them in trades. It's also about taking advantage of using your assets to bring in players. It's also about, in the case of the Charlotte Hornets, being in a position to get more assets back without really giving anything else because you can be a third team in a trade. This is where the Chicago Bulls continue to fail at. And we'll see how, let's see. The East is going to be fun this year. The East is going to be real fun. But with that said, it is Saturday, so it is Mailbag Day. Let's go ahead and get into these voicemails. This one's from Mello.
Yo, what up, Hayes? This is Mello. I'm just sitting here watching the show, and I'm thinking of a couple of things about this upcoming season, and thinking about the whole Giddey situation. I think he's actually going to be a good thing because of the type of game that he plays, where he gets others involved and things like that. But then again, you're thinking about who's going to actually be better because of him. And honestly, I think they should really try to move Vooch before the start of the season because he's slow and everybody else is going to be looking to run. Maybe, in the half court, it might help. I say, but the person who I think is going to benefit the most from having Giddey there is somebody who, if Vooch is there, isn't going to start. And that's going to be Jalen Smith. I think this kid, because he gets out and he runs. I watched a lot of the highlights and I watched some of the games when he was on the Pacers, when he actually got on the floor. And he gets out and he runs the floor. And Halliburton and him had a nice little connection with lobs and things like that, even prior when he was in Phoenix. Chris Paul was hitting him, little pick and rolls, lobs, and things like that. So he has a lot of athleticism with him that I don't think we've seen. Drummond did it, a couple of times when we still had Dragic, but we haven't had that type of situation. We run a pick and roll, and the big can actually roll to the basket and catch a lob. We haven't had that. And I think this kid is going to be good because of Giddey, how Giddey is going to actually make the game a lot easier for him along with other people. So maybe that's something they really need to consider, is trying to see what they can get for Vooch now as opposed to later. Because it's not like during the season he's going to do anything that's going to make his trade value go up. Because for Vooch, he is who he is. But that's not going to happen. Just want to see what your thoughts is on that.
Jalen Smith benefiting the most from Josh Giddey. Here's the thing. I do see a world in which that can happen, but let's not, if Jalen Smith does come off the bench, which, keep in mind, what you're saying there is exactly why we've heard that Jalen Smith was promised an opportunity to win the starting center position, because I do think there are things that Jalen Smith could bring on the basketball court, other than the raw scoring numbers, that could be more beneficial to how this team wants to play than necessarily what Nikola Vucevic does. But let's not make no mistake that I would assume would turn into a pretty damn good creator, especially in transition and on the fast break as well, and that's where he could benefit Jalen Smith if they're both coming off the bench. And as far as the starting, we'll see, man. At the end of the day, I do think that that Jalen is going to be a lot better. He's going to be better more than just because of Josh Giddey. I do think he could benefit from Josh Giddey, but I think he's also, Jalen Smith's a guy who's shown that he benefits from playing more minutes. And if long as Billy Donovan doesn't Andre Drummond this situation, there's going to be more minutes there from Jalen Smith. When you look at Jalen Smith's per 48, which, again, is a stat that I don't like to use, but I think it is a solid stat, and take it into consideration with your eye test with a player that just hasn't played a lot of minutes, right? But But then also when you look at the last time that Jalen Smith did play average over 20 minutes, like he gave you double-digit production. So I do think that with more minutes, Jalen Smith is going to be better. We'll just see how that develops for him. But great voicemail there, Mello. Let's get into this next one. This one is from Ace.
What's up, Hayes? This is Ace calling in. Hey, this doggone Patrick Williams situation, I think it might be a blessing in disguise because Miles Buzelis looks like he's the real deal, plays way more aggressive. And I know people are going to say, well, that's just based off of Summer League. He may not be strong enough, this, that, and the third. But, hey, listen, if we're going to go with this youth movement, we need to not only let him start based upon the Patrick Williams injury update, but we need to also let Jalen Smith start next to him. I know people are like, what? What's going on with that? Vooch is great. Love Vooch, double-double machine. Can't play defense for shit. Terrible in the pick and roll. I just think that Vooch, it's time for him to come off the bench. I don't know if he's going to accept it because Vooch is kind of like a prideful person. But if you start a lineup with Giddey, Kobe, Zach, Modest, and Jalen Smith, now you got a lineup in which you can actually play the way Billy Donovan wants to play. Vooch is going to slow them up in that starting lineup. Just my personal opinion. And then you can come off the bench with something solid like, hell, we got all type of weapons off the bench. Now you got Vooch coming off the bench. Now you got, whenever Patrick Williams decides to come back, he can come back and play the four off the bench. You got Ayo, you got Lonzo. Man, you got some weapons coming off that bench. Like, let me know what y'all thoughts are on that. I know I left Dalen Terry off, another player, but I just think if we're going youth movement, let's start Jalen Smith along with Modest. All right, peace.
All right, so here's the thing. Modest Buzelis should not start over P. Will, not at the 4, not yet. And I get what you said that, I get it, he may be slight, but you never know. But yeah, the thing is that you can ruin a player's confidence. There's a reason why Kevin Durant started off his career playing at shooting guard rather than 4. Now, if Patrick Williams is not healthy, that brings a different story about, right? But I still think Billy Donovan's on this team. He's probably going to go Torrey Craig before he goes the rookie and Modest Buzelis, unless Buzelis kills it. But I think this, right? You have to realize the starting line, you still want to create an environment where players can develop. And the starting lineup that you put with Modest Buzelis and Jalen Smith replacing Patrick, like, I get what you're saying offensively, but there are two sides of the ball. That whole lineup is barbecue chicken defensively. Whole entire lineup. Jalen Smith, people have tried to say, like, Jalen Smith's a really good defender. He's a good weak side defender. It's okay off ball. He does block some shots, and he rebounds well. But on ball, Jalen Smith is bad. He's very bad. Now, he's better than Nikola Vucevic, so there's that. But, like, you still want to create an environment where you're building things. And so in that starting lineup, the reason why Patrick Williams would probably still get the nod if he's healthy over Modest Buzelis is the perimeter defense that Patrick Williams does bring to that team. So that's a part that you have to look at it as well. But like I said, at the end of the day, I think long-term, the best case scenario for the Bulls is that two of these players, Patrick Williams, Modest Buzelis, Julian Phillips, two out of those players you feel are your starters going forward, that they, between now and the end of next season, right? Because I'll give Modest Buzelis that. The end of next season, that, not the season coming up, the season after, that those guys show that they can be a starting lineup together. And the reason why, having versatile forwards is the way that the modern NBA is going. And so if you have versatile forwards that can switch off at the 3 and the 4, that's where you start getting to kind of where the modern game is going. And I think that plays a big part into the flexibility that you have. And with having Josh Giddey theoretically as your point guard of the future, that all helps that as well. So that's what you're looking at. And I hope that, listen, Modest Buzelis, I think the world of Modest. And I think he's going to have a really good career. Now, I don't know if he's going to ascend to a star level or a franchise player level, but I think he is going to be one of those players that we look at and we say, we really like him on our team. That's the case. Worst case scenario, he can be Tyrese Thomas, and we're not even going to speak that into existence because, listen, that dude was just athleticism. He blinked at everything. But, you know, this is just a shot at Tyrese because I was one of those guys who believed in Tyrese Thomas. I was kind of pissed that he didn't work out, but that's my trauma for another day. That was a joke. Modest Buzelis should be a lot better than Tyrese Thomas. We're not even going to put those guys in the same category. Modest Buzelis has that dog in him. And let's see how that develops for him over his career. All right, let's get into the last voicemail for today. This one is from Michael Korn.
Hey, Hayes, Michael Korn here. How you doing, mate? Been listening to just about every show whole summer. There's some great weaving of topics together. Happy to see when you went over 20,000 subscriptions as well. This is what I want to say about the Bulls. I'm excited about the preseason, but first a little bit of doom and gloom. I'm sorry, but the Bulls are on the same arc. I hope they're going to not continue this, but for me, they're sort of, what I see is they're sort of on the same arc. I saw the White Sox, on 3 summers ago, the summer 22, went to a White Sox Cub game at Comiskey or White Sox Park, and crowd was great, and I was out in left field. But the White Sox on the field, not only did they suck, but they were dead. And I just thought, man, is this Tony La Russa? Is like, what's going on here? It's the ownership, general management, like all those things. But it's just a team that had no spirit. And I'm hoping the Bulls are not on the same arc, and they'll only win 17 games or so. So they're a little bit pessimistic, but it doesn't have to be this way. I'm thinking that, and this is where I'm optimistic, if you could have some of the young players basically, just rise above what Billy Donovan's going to be or how he's going to be coaching, rise above with their play, how Karnisovitz and company just have absolutely no personality, and I just don't know how good they are. And then the ownership. So I am hoping that some of the Bulls players really, have big leaps in their game, like Kobe, keep doing this thing. I really like Josh Giddey. OKC is my second favorite team. Had a chance to watch them, and all my friends who are there think we're getting a great player. I'm happy for them to, have Caruso and get a year or two out of his play. But Giddey could be really good. Io, man, and hopefully Matt Pazulis. And the thing that prompted me to call today more than anything, I think, is just reading that Patrick Williams is not ready, or no one really seems to know. So there's like that lack of transparency. Like, who the hell knows what his injury is or why it would take so long? It's like we've been here before with this front office. Hey, I didn't realize how long I rambled. I just want to conclude with something positive about the Bulls. With Wes Unseld, man, if you have a chance, look at his father, some of the highlights that could be around. His father was a great player, and hopefully being assistant coach, his son being assistant coach, can really instill great defense and rebounding, especially in the Jalen Smith. Hey, thanks. Bye.
Listen, the Bulls better not be on the same vibe as the White Sox, bro. Like, come on, man. A 17-win season. Listen, I got to cover this. You got to remember, listen, while I don't think the Bulls are going to be great, I still need an entertaining team, which I do think the Bulls are going to play an entertaining brand of basketball regardless, man. As far as, like you say, reasons to be excited, Josh Giddey, Kobe White, I'm going to be really interesting and locked in seeing how their dynamic works together, because this is one of the more important dynamics long-term for the Chicago Bulls, I think, for sure. And, we'll see how that develops. And Kobe White has that mentality. Kobe White's been going out, putting in work, as he always does every offseason. Io Dalen Terry have as well. I'm excited to see how these guys come into the season and use this as a launching pad. Now, as far as P. Will not being healthy to start a training camp, like I said, the article said recent weeks, maybe, and, it was an unofficial mini camp. They can't have official mini camp. So let's hope that played a part into all of it. I hope that Patrick Williams is able to start off the season healthy and have a fully healthy season. Because him playing with Josh Giddey, playing with kind of the new open play style that we're gonna instill, I think can definitely help Patrick Williams kind of find himself in this league, and I think that's an important next step for Patrick Williams as well. Now, as far as your last point, Wes Unseld Jr. I know who Wes Unseld was in the mentality he brought to the basketball court, but Wes Unseld Jr. The thing I'm most excited about him is the mentorship, the development part, and also the fact that he's bringing over, and it comes down to Billy Donovan listening to him and Dan Craig, but I really like the experience these guys are bringing over and the coaches that they've worked under, because they can bring some of that experience and help Billy Donovan in certain areas that he lacks in situational awareness and things like that. So I think that the Bulls made two very important coach signings here, and we typically look at just the roster, but I never know if they'll get the accolades or whatever, but if we see these players kind of start refining some of their game and developing, best believe, yes, the player development department, but also Wes Unseld, Dan Craig, as being two coaches that are traveling day in and day out with these players and seeing them every day, they can really start helping the Bulls get some of that upper echelon development that we've been missing out on the last few years. But that's my thought process, man. You guys can let me know how you feel on everything down below. Make sure you guys are following the channel at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. That's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.